These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal, Television for Agricultural Business Decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine, and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Thanks so much for joining us today on Market Journal. I'm Rebel Saklocha. What a busy week for the sport of rodeo here in Nebraska. The high school finals are happening in Burwell, as well as the Hall of Fame Buffalo Bill Rodeo. We are on location today at the Wild West Arena in North Platte, where the Hall of Fame Buffalo Bill Rodeo will be happening this week. Coming up on this week's show, soybean diseases are sprouting up in Nebraska. We'll get details with Nebraska Extension. Plus, the heat has arrived for the summer of 2024. Eric Hunt will let us know if any relief is in store. But we'll begin here. We're heading out and in the field once again. Let's check in on crops in Central Nebraska. Bryce brings us the latest.
We're just north of Lexington, Nebraska for this week's In the Field update, visiting with Don Beatty. Tell me a little about the farming operation.
Well, I'm a family farming operation. We've been here in this location for 151 years, the family has. So I'm real fortunate, and I'm nearing the end of my tenure as head farmer. I'm going to turn over to my daughter in a couple of years.
Primarily corn and soybeans, but we're standing in a wheat field. Wheat looks really good.
Wheat looks phenomenal this year. It's been a good year for wheat. We started rotating into some irrigated wheat about 4 years ago. Makes a nice rotation for the corn and soybeans.
You and I were talking about trying to pencil it out in comparison to corn and soybeans, but you use it as a forage, you bale the straw, able to find a market for that in the area?
Right, we can bale the straw, find a market to feedlots, then we grow some forage sorghum after that, bale that off, and it gives us a different rotation, and our corn yields the next year are usually 10 to 15% higher. It just makes a nice rotation for the crops.
Let's talk about your corn and soybeans. Most recently, you were replanting a field of soybeans. What happened that led to that?
After some of the rainfall, we think we probably started a little bit too soon and compacted the seed when we planted. So we had just one small field we had to replant, and that's been pretty common in the area. There's a lot of the neighbors have had to replant a field or two of corn or a field or two of soybeans, just the way the spring has been.
In general, though, pretty darn good spring for moisture.
It's been a good spring for moisture. We've had more rain through the last part of April and May than we did all of 2022. So it's been, I'm not going to complain.
You do quite a few different on-farm research projects in conjunction with the university and different partners. Tell me about a study in particular you're doing this year that's interesting to you.
Probably one of the ones we're doing a fungicide test on different timing of fungicide applications and whether or not fungicide even pays, whether you see disease or not. So we're going to be applying fungicide at probably 2 to 3 different times throughout the summer on both corn and soybeans. And this is in conjunction with Corteva and the university both.
Do you suggest ag producers be part of the On-Farm Research Network?
The On-Farm Research Network is awesome. You get the university's expertise on how to run a trial, and you get to try things on your own farm, doing your own ideas, and it's a great thing to do. So contact your local extension educator, and they'll sign you up.
We're visiting with Don Beatty today, just north of Lexington, Nebraska, for this week's In the Field update.
Thanks, Bryce. It looks like the wheat crop is progressing well. Harvest is underway south of us in Kansas. According to Kansas Wheat, rain is an ironic concern for this year's wheat crop. Producers are asking Mother Nature to hold off just a bit so they can get a quickly ripening crop out of the field and into the bin. Well, as we mentioned at the top of the show, we are coming to you from the Wild West Arena in North Platte. This week, the Miss Rodeo Nebraska Pageant took place, and I had the chance to catch up with Miss Rodeo Nebraska 2024, Josee Saults. We are arena side with Miss Rodeo Nebraska 2024, Josee Saults. Josee, just 1 year ago, you were crowned right here in the arena. What is it like to be back experiencing Nebraska Land Days as Miss Rodeo Nebraska?
Well, it's a completely different experience than last year competing as a contestant. It's still a little stressful because I have a very busy schedule this week, and it's just kind of surreal how fast a year has gone by. You know, everyone told me that the year is going to fly by, and I was like, oh, I'm sure it will. And they were right. It really has flown by, and it's crazy to think that I'm halfway through my year already.
Absolutely. Well, you were selected a year ago, but you officially took over in January, so you're 6 months into your job. Give us a recap of what the last 6 months have been like.
Well, I hit the ground running right off in January. I went to Denver, Colorado for the National Western Stock Show. I then went to Rapid City for Rodeo Rapid City for 8 days, which was a blast. And then I went to Florida, which is one of the biggest queen trips out of the whole year. I was really looking forward to that, and I really got to know a lot of the other state queens that week. We really bonded. I tried alligator for the first time. I went on a hog hunt for the first time, so that week was a blast. And then I had our first Nebraska rodeo, Rodeo Grand Island, and that was a lot of fun. I had Miss Rodeo South Dakota and Miss Rodeo Iowa join me. And then in March, I attended Rodeo Houston as a pivot girl, and that was definitely an experience. I know you went as a pivot girl last year, so you can probably agree that it was definitely an experience, to say the least.
A very cool rodeo, but an experience nonetheless.
Yes. And then in April, I was able to go out to California for 2 weeks and attend the Red Bluff Roundup and the Lakeside Rodeo, which was a lot of fun. And then in May, I have been at a rodeo every weekend. So I'm very happy to be here in Nebraska finally for a little while.
Absolutely. Well, you have deep roots in rodeo. Talk about your background in the sport and how your family's involved.
I grew up on our ranch just west of North Platte here a little ways, and I have two brothers, and we grew up riding horses. I've rodeoed my whole life. My brothers compete in college rodeo right now, and my little brother is buying his permit, so he'll be pro rodeoing this year. So I'm hoping to see him at a couple rodeos, hopefully this summer. And then I high school rodeoed, and then I college rodeoed for Eastern Wyoming College in Torrington, Wyoming. And I kind of had taken a break from queening to focus on my rodeo career. And I decided to put rodeo on hold for a little while and run for Miss Rodeo Nebraska, and here I am.
Absolutely. Well, we just have a few seconds left. In one word or in a sentence, what are you most excited for about the next 6 months?
Oh, I don't know if I can sum that up so shortly, but I'm just really excited to keep traveling the country with my other state queens and get to know them better.
Thanks to Josee for taking the time to visit with us this week to share her experiences. We hope she has an amazing year as Miss Rodeo Nebraska. Up next, school is out for the summer. However, for a select group of 4-H students, the summer break started in a unique way. Students and educators switched roles for a day in the 4-H Tech Changemakers program. This initiative empowers youth to step into leadership positions and teach digital skills to their community. Market Journal's Bill Dodd captured the sights and sounds of this event.
Nebraska 4-H Tech Changemakers started about 3 years ago as part of a grant from National 4-H Council. We have youth and adults working together to do a lot of programming around the state. The goals of the program are twofold. One is really to bring awareness to the need for rural broadband across the country. And the second is to teach employability skills utilizing technology. We've had a variety of funders through the years, and we've done a wide variety of program, everything from how to build a resume to building a LinkedIn profile to use drones in a wide variety of careers. And so we have students who work with educators around the state to do 45-minute session programming, and we decided this year that we really wanted to focus on how could we help educators. Part of the program is Teens as Teachers, and so utilizing them to help put on a conference for educators, both informal and formal, across our great state, and everywhere from elementary level to post-secondary.
So this this is a group of tech change makers. So those are 4-H students who are actually the cultural brokers at helping those of us who didn't grow up with digital technologies actually deliver the goods, if you will. There's a huge group of teachers who support those students, a large group of extension educators who are all there to help coach and navigate our community. So I think, you know, that's who's in attendance. How is this going to have an impact? I love this program in that it's taking the student and really creating a team around them as teachers.
My advice to current aspiring future educators really thinking about how to ensure success, particularly in rural, I would really focus a lot, not only on the relationships, because those are so critical to really being a member of the community and really creating community sustainability. And so I think that the relationship building aspect is one of the most important pieces. I think the second piece is, as a teacher, really just using your voice, whether that be at the local level, the state level, the federal level, really thinking about how you can use your experience and your unique position to advocate for rural students and rural schools.
If you would like to learn more about the 4-H Tech Changemakers program, we will include a link along with this story on the Market Journal homepage. Let's turn our attention over to the markets. This week, Bryce was joined by the president of Global Commodity Analytics to discuss the latest trends in the markets. Here's their conversation from Thursday morning.
Joining us this week to give us his thoughts on the grain complex is Mike Zuzolo, the president of Global Commodity Analytics. Mike, it's good to see you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Bryce, for having me.
Of course. Let's begin our discussion here talking about data. We'll start on the U.S. side with the USDA World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates that came out midweek. We've also got some other data coming from elsewhere. Let's start on wheat. What did you see USDA do during that first report with WASDE? What piqued your interest?
Yeah, like they did last month, the USDA came in and cut the world stocks to numbers by taking major exporters down in production 6.5 million metric tons. That included Europe, that included Russia, that included Ukraine, some pretty big players when it comes to the U.S. wheat market, Bryce. And with that change, as it's a second month in a row of seeing some production number cuts on a global basis, we remain at a 10-year low on world wheat stocks to use. This month, however, USDA jumped in there and took our exports up 25 million bushels. They also, very surprisingly, and I don't think has been traded yet in the marketplace yet, has come in and taken the average price for 24-25 wheat from $6 all the way up to $6.50. So 50-cent jump in 1 month. That is a big jump. I can't tell you how many years it's been that I've seen a 50-cent jump in the wheat price for the United States from 1 month to the next, but I will be digging into that because I think that really does open up the door on these weather supply driven issues we continue to see. I think it really does two things: open the door up to another move up in terms of weather related rallies if we continue to see weather be prominent in the grain complex this summer in the northern hemisphere. Number two, I think it comes into a point where the floor maybe is put in the wheat a little bit more. So I think that's a key thing, that wheat is still a major player here. Even with harvest pressure and a negative seasonal, I think the wheat still is a major player in the grain markets.
All right, let's shift over to corn and soybeans, Mike. We look at what USDA came out with WASDE. Really no big changes as I saw it on the corn front. But on soybeans, I think there's this continued expectation from the trade and elsewhere. We continue to see some adjustments and USDA not making those, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think this is where wheat is important to me because I think it can be a playbook for the corn market on a global scale, i.e. South American production, I think really needs to be chopped down. Brazil in particular, who is our major competitor on the corn side of the equation right now, I think the 122 corn production number that USDA kept us on track with in the WASDE numbers is too high. I'm at a 115 number. CONAB, the official agency of Brazil, came in the day after WASDE and said that they're going to raise their number from 111 and a fraction to 114 and a fraction. So I'm very close to CONAB. I feel very comfortable with that. That's still 7 to 8 million metric tons that I think USDA is too high. And so we're like the wheat stocks to use, corn stocks to use globally, now continuing to drop another 0.2% on this current report. I think it could drop further, and that drives us back to the lowest levels since 2012, 2013. And I think that's a key element, and I think it really raises the bar. Really makes me wonder how nervous the managed funds are in terms of their positions. Makes me wonder how short bought the commercials are right now.
As we look at the big picture of the grain complex, I imagine sitting here mid-June, the three big things moving forward are weather, weather, and weather. What am I missing?
I think the crude oil and the dollar is an important piece of the puzzle as well, because the sticky inflation that we continue to see occur in this market and keeps the Federal Reserve from cutting rates. Historically, if that sticky inflation sticks around, it tends to drive the crude oil market higher, and that's especially if we have a decent global demand pace and world economy, which I think we do. There's a lot of traders worried, Bryce, about the deflationary impact and pressures of China and their lack of buying in the grain and oil seeds. You don't have to worry about that as much as if you have the weather market coming, and if you break the dollar. Soybeans is a great example because we're trading a dollar that is nearly as high as it was back in January of 2023 against the Brazilian currency. So that's a natural weight against us and keeps the pressure on us to keep our prices lower. And I think if we could get the dollar to break on some more good macro news, that would really open, I think, the door up for some crude oil support.
Quick word on the Fed, you brought it up, but seems like there's less and less optimism that they will have multiple cuts to the interest rate. Your thoughts on that?
I think the Fed's going to have to come around and cut this year in the calendar year 2024. Anecdotally, I'm hearing a lot more people losing their jobs. I think the debt load is getting too strong. The one thing that keeps us elevated in terms of feeling good is the stock market. So it would only take a 10 or 20% correction in the stock market, I think, to wake this market up to the idea that the Fed's got to move. So one cut, I think, in 2024 is a must. If you ask me, Bryce, 2 cuts would not surprise me at all.
A couple seconds left. Just want to get your final thoughts. What else is on your mind for these ag commodities?
You know, the big thing is to watch, and what we've talked about today is watch for your feed needs and locking those in if you're livestock, and watch for your diesel and your fuel needs for the fall if this energy market wakes up.
Well, believe it or not, Husker Harvest Days will be here before you know it, and there are numerous new things to see and do. The corn harvest demonstration fields were all planted in mid-April, and for the first time ever, there will be a new soybean plot and a short stature corn plot on site at the show. Those plots go along with new cover crop demonstration plots and tours. You can get all the latest information on the show in the June issue of Nebraska Farmer. It is time now for weather with Market Journal meteorologist Eric Hunt. Eric, it's certainly warming up out here in North Platte today. I understand you have another extended outlook for us. What can we expect from Mother Nature in the weeks ahead?
I kind of want to start off today by taking a look and review what we had for May in terms of stormy weather, why we had that. Now, our current sea surface temperature anomaly is again very, very warm across a lot of the Atlantic Basin, the Caribbean, and Gulf of Mexico. So we certainly have the stage set for a potentially very active hurricane season. Also direct your attention to this very, very warm nose of water across portions of the North and Central Pacific. And we also had, in that same area, we had a lot of very strong ridging. So again, this kind of helped reinforce this atmospheric ridging across the south of the Gulf of Alaska. And the troughs are kind of coming, alongside of that toward the east and diving into California and moving up into the northern plains. So where we had lower height anomalies here across the northern plains means we had more troughing in that region. And to the south and east of that, we had a lot of severe weather in the month of May. A lot of tornadoes, a lot of hail. The Omaha office has already issued 94 tornado warnings this year. That is a record going back to 1986, with 53 in April. So again, this really kind of started at the very end of April and carried into the month of May. The North Platte office hasn't issued nearly as many as they had issued, say, 15, 20 years ago. But May 23rd was a top 5 date for tornado warnings issued. So again, some portions of western Nebraska haven't been spared from this either. Precipitation month of May was very, very heavy across a lot of eastern and central Nebraska, a little bit less than average kind of south of Lincoln, a little bit drier than average across western Nebraska. And we did see some tremendous drought improvements here, kind of from Columbus down toward York and heading toward the Kansas border. Some slight degradation across western Nebraska. But anyway, this precipitation in eastern Nebraska in general was good news. Now, there was some flooding, but just given that we're, from spring of 22 to spring of 23, so this was released earlier this year, we saw some significant groundwater declines for a second straight year across a lot of Nebraska, particularly in eastern Nebraska. So the eradication of drought is certainly good news for our groundwater. Moving to the seasonal outlook, the CPC shows a very good chance of below average precipitation across the entire middle of the country, including all of Nebraska from July to September, with warm temperatures expected. The European model is actually showing, in terms of height anomalies, they're showing relatively high height anomalies across the entire United States, with the exception of the Northwest. Now, if we take a look at the composites for analogs 2020, 2010, and 2016, this actually does verify a little bit with more higher height anomalies in the eastern United States, lower anomalies in the western United States. And with this, they are expecting warm temperatures across the central United States. If we take a look at the composites from 2010 through 2020, or 2010, 16, and 20, again, generally above average, particularly in the east, but pretty much every climate division in Nebraska comes out warm. So I am fairly confident of July and August being warmer than average across this region. And if we go back and take a look, through history, 2010 and 2020 were above average for temperatures in July and August. 2016 came in a little bit below average. The seasonal outlook from the European model for July and August is below average across the Panhandle and parts of central Nebraska, maybe slightly above in southeastern Nebraska. Composites not showing a real strong signal wet or dry across the state, but a little bit wetter further east in the Corn Belt. But again, if we take a look at the precipitation trends, 2010 and 2016 were a little bit above average. 2020 was a little below average for July and August precipitation. And the drought outlook for the rest of the summer is actually some eradication across portions of southeastern Nebraska. Now, again, I am a little concerned about drought formation across the Panhandle if we don't start getting some rain soon. Thanks. Back to you.
Thanks for that outlook, Eric. Well, finally today, the growing season for soybeans is just getting underway, and there are several more challenges ahead for Nebraska producers. We recently caught up with Nebraska Extension plant pathologist Mangel to learn about the potential disease risks soybean producers should be aware of. Mike Straub has more.
Areas around the state have faced different planting conditions, and there is a soybean seedling disease for all of them. We typically see more seedling disease in soybeans during cool, wet springs. However, these conditions mostly favor the fungal-like organisms called water molds.
So the state's kind of in different stages all over the place. Some growers got in early, so we've got some earlier, more developed beans going on, but we also have beans that are just starting to go. So very diverse stages. We've also got different environment conditions around the state as well. So places with more water, we're seeing some seedling disease showing up, just some of the conditions there. Those cooler, wetter soils, when those beans come up, they'll struggle a little bit more if they've got some fungi growing in the soil with them. Signs to look out for that are just damping off, and that's just sort of when a soybean grows and then gives up and keels over shortly after emerging. If you see signs of that, especially if you see pockets of it, you could think about you probably have some sort of seedling disease in there that's impacting those.
The most common method for disease management is the use of seed treatment fungicides. These products can provide protection against some of the pathogens that cause seedling diseases. However, mostly only provide protection during the first few weeks immediately after planting. Another option is delaying planting until more favorable conditions exist for rapid germination and emergence.
For management, if you think you have seedling disease, really right now it's too late to do anything. Once those beans are in the ground, once your treatment's on there, you didn't put a treatment on, you're kind of stuck with what you got. But what you can do is watch for signs of that seedling disease and take good notes on it. Management's going to be done for this one ahead of season. So select a variety with good resistance for that disease. Pair a seed treatment with that resistant variety that's going to work on that disease. And disease management, seed treatments, or varietal resistance is often disease specific. So figure out what seedling disease you're dealing with, because there's several. One way to do that is to take plant samples and send them into a diagnostic lab like the UNL Plant and Pest Diagnostic Clinic. Once you've sort of put that package together, if you still have problems in the future, one thing to think about is if you have a specific problem field, consider moving that around later in your planting rotation. So plant that field last, for example. It's just going to give it a little bit more time to dry out and warm up, which is going to be better for the soybeans.
Concerns about white mold arise earlier in the season during flowering. It is only during flowering stage that soybeans are susceptible to white mold infection. By mid-August, disease symptoms can be seen on individual or pockets of dead or dying plants.
White mold is sort of the first foliar fungi that you want to manage on soybeans, the first foliar disease you need to think about. Right around canopy closures when the critical time to control this is. So, when you get to mid to late R1, early R2 on soybeans, when you have flowers present, that's when the plant's susceptible. So you've got to get out there with a foliar fungicide before those spores from the fungi start to fly. So before that R2 timing or around there, that's when you need to get out and manage it. In the past, we had a lot of people start to see symptoms later on, into August. By that point, it's too late. The damage has been done. It's just the plant's finally starting to show enough of the symptoms that you're seeing it, but you got to get out there early with that one. So white mold's the next thing to think about, especially if you were dealing with it in previous years. If you were dealing with it then, you're likely to have it in that field and it'll probably show up again. If it's something you haven't dealt with in these fields in the past, just consider watching for it. But I wouldn't think that you need to rush out and apply an application where you've never had it before. After white mold, you will have other diseases like frog eye leaf spot show up. That's a foliar pathogen. A fungicide application in situations where you've had disease pressure in the past might make sense in some of those fields. But just think about how much damage it's actually doing and try to pair your decision with how much damage is there. Last of all, late season stuff, we'll see sudden death syndrome show up. It's important to talk about that one because it's a foliar symptom, but it's not a foliar pathogen. So a fungicide application is not going to help do anything for that. That's actually impacting the plant down in the soil. So you can't really do anything other than select a resistant variety and pair that with the seed treatment in future years.
With much needed moisture falling in the recent past, seedling diseases will start to develop as well. To protect your future investment, always take time to do the proper pathogen identification. Sending samples to the UNL Plant and Pest Diagnostic Center is a recommended resource. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Mike Straub.
Thanks for that story, Mike. You can learn more about potential soybean diseases to be aware of this year by visiting cropwatch.unl.edu. Well, that'll do it for this week's show. I hope you've enjoyed this special from the Buffalo Bill Rodeo here in North Platte. If you'd like to keep up with all of the rodeo content our team creates throughout the week, I invite you to visit ruralradionetwork.com. From there, simply hover over Ag News and select Rodeo News from the drop-down. We hope to see you back here next time, but until then, I'm Rebel Saklocha. Have a great week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.